we'll start the panel today by looking into creating a sovereign African, Pan-African, all-Africa, African knowledge-based funding strategy framework approach. How do we fund our work as South Africans, but also as Africans? And if these colleagues are here, I'd like to invite Sis Thandokazi Kumamoyo from the TIA, Ntate Katleho Ralihoko from the National Research Foundation, Sis Nontombi Maseko from the DTIC, and I'm tempted, I'm actually tempted to pull some of you from the floor. Let's see if we can do this in a true African style. Let me see, 2 hands. South African Bureau of Standards, do you think you can come and join us if you have time, Ubaba? If time allows. Someone from the SIDFA, if you are still here. Okay, thank you so much. So what we'll do this morning, just for about an hour, we're going to have a conversation on if we were to be given a whole lot of funding support, what frameworks and strategies, maybe even priorities, would we put in place? What is the best way for us as South Africans and Africans to finance our initiatives? Because funding is a currency. It's power, it's an energy that nourishes everything to be enlivened. So this is the conversation. So what I will do is that we'll start with our colleagues from the Technology Innovation Agency, but for everyone here, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves, where you're coming from, maybe what you do, but then respond to, after everything you have seen here and heard, what do you think we should do, not only as the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, but all of us as a collective? How can we work together to come up with funding frameworks and opportunities to nourish the initiatives that you all heard of? And as I said, not only for South Africa, but a Pan-African agenda, because no one country can develop alone. We are all aware of the challenges that we're having currently. So we'll start with Sis Nothando, and then I'll then call the others as we go along. I'll also sit down. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Doc, for this platform. And just to provide a platform where we can co-create and think together for the IKS support space. So my name is Thandokazi Ngumamoyo. I am the General Manager for Strategic Partnerships, Business Development and Stakeholder Relations at the Technology Innovation Agency. I think before I go into what would a funding structure or look like to really deal with the structural challenges that we have in mainstreaming IKS-based solutions so that they're able to compete globally and are able to compete with your other, mainstream drugs or pharmaceutical companies that we know of, more of Western medicine. I would, maybe I wanna really talk about a bit of what we do as TIA so that it doesn't seem like there has not been any efforts to support new products to the IKS space. And of course, we've got a different funding instruments as the Innovation Agency, starting from your proof of concept to commercialization. And we do have a particular focus unit, an IKS investment unit, where we just look at IKS. Of course, there's energy, there's industrial, biotech, and so forth. But we made a decision together with Dr. Anja Balala that within TIA itself, IKS cannot just be a certain subset under agriculture or the health unit. It must be standalone because it's an economy on its own. The challenges are different. Whether those challenges are geographic or demographic or technical, but it must have its own customized way of funding. And I think since 2021, Doc, or 2020, we then established that unit. And what we've then since done as well is to look at not just putting in money, but the technical assistance. I mean, we've got a biotech, I mean, an IKS platform in Free State. I think it's led by Prof. Matsabisa, where we're saying for product development, you've got IKS innovators who are sitting in communities who might not necessarily have the equipment to really productize their solutions. And then we provide that technical assistance as well. But what we've seen is that that's not enough, right? It's not enough on our own that we do that as an innovation agency. The quantum of, I mean, we largely depend on the fiscus, we largely depend on the parliamentary grant, and that we know is dwindling. We've seen the challenges that we have in the country. So there's a lot of competing priorities from government. And the thinking that now we are putting across is to say, how do we have an instrument that is able to syndicate funding, not only just from government, which is ourselves as TIA or the DSTI, but from other financiers, your NRFs, your DTIC, your IDC, but most importantly, private capital. That is able to put money in these solutions. But that type of funding cannot be your technical or your typical kind of venture capital funding or commercial funding, because there's a long journey, and the type of innovators or entrepreneurs that you're supporting will not necessarily make money immediately. So it needs to be developmental. It needs to be more than one investor that looks at this thing. So our thinking is that as we move along in the future, we should have a fund that is syndicated by different players and different funders, right? That's one. The second thing is we should have a technical assistance aspect within that fund. So don't just give the money, but you must ask the entrepreneur, what other support do you need? Do you need equipment? Do you need testing facilities? Do you need incubation support? Do you need mentorship? Do you need, so all the other stuff which are not necessarily your rands and cents, but are to support the business development aspect and so forth. So that needs to be put in place. But also what we've done as well from our side, and we're wanting to grow with the department, is centers of innovation and entrepreneurship, where we're saying in rural places where they might not necessarily have access to a Free State where there is a platform or a product development platform for technology development, what can we do there where we can have those type of incubators, what you call centers of innovation and entrepreneurship, that a funder must put in place capital to establish those, that if in that particular area you need a certain equipment to make sure that we're able to produce, let's do that. And I mean, we were chatting now recently with my colleague, Unontombi, that, you know, going beyond South Africa when you are selling, the kind of regulations and the kind of requirements, the instrument or the kind of funding must be able to support with that regulatory support. Not only just from a money perspective, but also from a pool of experts. The instrument itself must be able to give you access to a person that can help you with packaging, can help you with testing, can help you with expertise that you might not have as an indigenous person. All you know is that when I take this particular product and I drink it, my tummy becomes okay. But you need a scientist, maybe in some cases, to help you to, that instrument must be able to give you access to that. And I think just as I part off on this one, Doc, what we've also done from an African perspective, coming to the Pan-Africanism, we've established together again with the support of the department, with Kenya, with Namibia, Tanzania, Zambia. For now, it's about 12 countries, and we're going to grow that. We're having Cape Verde, Ethiopia. We're establishing a Pan-African Innovation Fund. Now, these are African countries who all of those countries have endowment of indigenous knowledge, right? And we are now saying we as Africa need to rise and have an instrument that talks to what we need to do. Must be structured, the instrument, if it must be equity or loan or grant, whatever it is, but it must talk to how we look like, how we understand things, how we engage and speak. I should not be rejected for a funding application because I could not write proper English. An investor must understand the language and must have expertise to be able to articulate and translate my application in a way that is understandable to the capital markets. So an instrument that is able to walk the journey with the type of funder or the type of innovator you are working with. So what we're doing, even as at an African level, is look at those type of instruments where we're now leveraging each other's money as different countries to put together this Pan-African Innovation Fund, which then has a bigger voice even on the global stage. When we're talking about global competitiveness, now we go together as Africa as one voice with that collective intellectual capital and muscle. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you so much, Sis Tando. To Sis Nontombi, what Sis Tando is sharing is that we invested a lot on the, let's say maybe the basic research and the innovation part of work. However, it's also well known in our strategies, this innovation chasm, and I even call it a ditch. So what would you say we should do to then create a fund that nourishes the innovation value chains, but then seamlessly link to manufacturing value chains? So that's one. I also would like you to reflect on what we had on the first day, that when you look into the analysis that Professor Maharaj shared with us, is that this dependency on external funders, for example, he indicated that investment from the Western world is shrinking, huge percentage. But then there is something that is emerging in the BRICS market, for example. How can we then engage the BRICS in then making sure that we industrialize? I mean, we've got good examples of, let's say, China, India, Brazil. So I'd like you to reflect on those two issues. A seamless move from innovation to manufacturing or industrialization, but also how do we choose our friends?
Good morning, colleagues. As already introduced previously, my name is Nontombi Masego. I'm the Director of Innovation and Technology Policy and Strategy at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and I must say it has been a very fruitful 3 days in terms of moving forward. Now, coming to your question, Doctor, you know, I want to just maybe let the House know that Tando and I has worked for quite a long time in the space. And one of the things that we marvel on is how things, as much as they seem like they're changing, but they stay the same, right, Tando? So one of the very first proposal, Doc, that we had on this aspect, we have a national technology commercialization strategy that we developed between the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation and the DTIC, right? So we co-own this document because we realize that you can't, that there's an interlink in our work that really becomes mushy when you need to do this handover, right? So one of the things that we had as an idea from a funding perspective, and maybe now we are ripe for that, Tando, is that, you know, instead of TIA having a evaluation committee for one fund, and DTIC having an evaluation committee for another fund, and SIDFA having an evaluation committee for a certain fund. Now, if you think about it, from a DTIC perspective, we are looking at potential for manufacturing, we are looking at technology development, we are looking at how you enter markets, right? Export promotion, those kinds of activities. And TIA will be looking again at technology development and also at how really you then transition from a technology to maybe a small scale manufacturing. That's what predominantly they will be. And SIDFA will be looking at the business aspect, the venture that you are going to use to drive this technology into the market. So we're looking for, and this is one business that needs all this support, right? Why are we not sitting in one room and saying, actually, from a SPY fund, I can fund for a prototype development? And SIDFA says, okay, we can do brand development. We can start seeing how we reach the markets. So it becomes one project, as much as we are narrowly defined in terms of our mandate, but we are able to then support you at the stage where you are. Now, don't be too hard on us. We are trying. So one of the things that I've started doing with TIA as well and the platforms is to say, how do we then convert platforms and make them from technology platforms to being industrial platforms, right? Then you become deliberate about what industries must come out from those platforms. So that's just one, a proposal on the table. And I think yesterday, one colleague of us was telling us that the decisions are up to us, and the power to make the decision is up to us. So I think we are at an opportune moment to do that. That's the first one. Then the second one is about really leveraging. And we have started doing that. And even the idea of having one fund that have multiple contributors to that fund makes it even more plausible, because at the end of the day, if I put money in that fund, and I will say, I want to see manufacturing happening for that company. Tando, you will say, I want to see development. So already, we as much as we treat it as one, but we know that all our mandates will be taken care of under that particular fund. Okay. Then going to your second question around how to leverage on the BRICS and our international partners. Let me tell you, we are already doing it. Within the BRICS environment, we already have what we want to establish as an innovation center. That it's one center that all 5 countries, own. And then we will have thematic areas. One of the topical ones now is energy. Is how then you drive energy strategies for our countries, right? Because it's one of the common problems. And also manufacturing capabilities. So each country will have a sector focus that they lead under this center, and we use resources within the countries in terms of know-how, in terms of skills development, in terms of funding modalities, in terms of governance frameworks as well. That will then ensure that whatever project that we embark on succeeds. And also, even in terms of funding, all countries contribute to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling much more joyous that if I stand in the shoes of the scientists and the innovators, it's really frustrating for them to go to one organization, maybe get support, then only to have to go to another organization for them to then proceed, only to find that there's no communication between these various funding agencies. Now, I'd like to bring in the National Research Foundation. In our space, it's important that we do some foundational work, some basic research. Excuse me. Maybe for the benefit of everyone here, we used to have an Indigenous Knowledge Systems call at the National Research Foundation, which was meant to give us some pipelines, which will end up in innovation in enterprises, then industrialization. But that ended up also fizzling away. Ntati Katleho, after listening to the two colleagues, what would you say should be done for us to keep on generating new knowledge? I mean, we have barely tapped into this African wisdom. We haven't even started in truth. So what can we do? How can we reimagine what the NRF and maybe even organizations like yourselves can do in order to link to innovation, to enterprise development, to manufacturing? Do you think it's possible that at your stage, we already think about an industry when we select projects that needs to be funded even for foundational research? Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invite. My name is Katla Oraloko. I'm a research management specialist at the National Research Foundation. And I think that is a very important question. But just to respond to that, I want to give a helicopter view of what the actual work that the NRF does. So the NRF is mostly responsible for promoting and supporting research, and more specifically in the human capacity development, right? So in the NRF, what we do is we fund your postgraduate students, honors level, masters, doctoral, and postgrad. And we also fund research, that is being done within the IKS systems, and I think the NRF plays a very important role within the research and development space. But in the funding of the programs that we do, we also have the centers of excellence that we fund. I had a conversation yesterday with one of the directors from the centers of excellence that deals with IKS situated at Northwest University. And we also have the Sachi chairs, that are split into different tiers. You have tier 1 and tier 2. And just recently in April, we launched about 41 chairs that focus on historically disadvantaged institutions as well as universities of technology, So that is the kind of work that we do. But in terms of research, that is just the one leg of the NRF. We do have other facilities, national facilities of the NRF. One being SCION, which looks into the observation of environments, as well as aqua biodiversity. We also have SAEB, which deals with the marine space, as well as aqua biodiversity. And we have SAAO, as well as SARAO, which deal in the radio astronomy. There is a lady who's very passionate about radio astronomy, Marianne West. Please go interact. She's in one of the stands. But just to come back to your question, I think it's important that we go to the grassroots and seek information. One of the ideas that I received from this specific platform is that as experts, we need our knowledge from, the knowledge experts, the people that are doing IKS, and somebody said, in order to understand IKS, you need to deal with the community. And with the NRF Vision 2030, Research for a Better Society, we are looking into going into communities, to see that we're no longer focusing about publication, because already the NRF publishes about 26,000 publications annually. So now we want to know what is the work that is being done, more specifically by IKS. And with investment, I think it will help bring that funding framework of IKS so that we can invest into more researchers to do IKS technology-based, research. So I think that is the kind of work that the NRF does, and that is how we want to expand the knowledge when it comes to IKS. And I'm glad that the experts that are sitting here, we can agree in one thing, that it's high time that we don't work in silos. We co-create, and I like the idea of having one funding instrument, one funding instrument that is going to create a pipeline. So imagine if you have a funding instrument whereby you have the NRF that will support the researcher, to do the actual research, to either validate, the research. I know there was a conversation in day one about the validation of research, to do the actual research, the testing and everything. And then that funding also goes to other science councils such as this CSIR, and then we work with NIPMO, in terms of intellectual property. And then once that has been done, we work with TIA, for commercialization, So it needs to be a pipeline, So the idea of just the NRF working in silo, and just focusing on just one instrument that produces publications or outputs, it's high time that is phased out. We need to come as industry partners and collaborate and have a pipeline, and it's important to understand that the fiscal is constrained at the moment, so we can't look outward. We need to solve our own problems, and IKS is it promotes that idea that Africans can solve their own African problems. So I think when we have such a pipeline whereby we have a co-creation fund whereby all these different partners can work into creating a pipeline, so that there is no missing, so that one does not find themselves missing, after getting funding from NRF to say, what then now? So we need to create a pipeline whereby we say, from the NRF, you can go to NIPMO for your intellectual property, from NIPMO for you to commercialize TIA, and so forth with the DTI as well. So I think that is the contribution that we need to make as the National Research Foundation and all these experts sitting here. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That is much appreciated, that there is this alignment of thought, that we cannot have this segmented type funding. So we need a holistic type funding mechanism and system that then takes care, in your case, of the knowledge creators, which will be the students, but also the scientists, to generate this new knowledge together with the knowledge holders. Mkhulu, we have been working together for quite some time, the SABS and the DSTI and the consortia, especially the tech transfer commercialization platforms. I remember back in the day, you used to have the design clinic at the SABS. I don't know if it's still there, but my thought was, as you can see, we have so many small, medium enterprises. I can't even imagine, for example, to the likes of the CITFA and yourselves, how you cope with working with very many small, medium enterprises. Is it feasible to say we can create industries for every individual enterprise? Or in your space, are you deliberating on how we can come up with spaces where, shared spaces, let me say, where a collective of enterprises that are in the same industry can share those spaces so that we maximize, especially in terms of the funding, the energy, but to align the strategy towards industrialization? Share with us what you do as the SABS, your main mandate, but also I know that you have been grappling with these thoughts of how can we have as many small, medium enterprises into the space, but towards industrialization, mass industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. My name is Dumsani Mgati, as they've said earlier on. I'm the lead sales and business development within the SABS. My role is to create strategic partnerships with government entities as well as private entities. One of the other key roles is to develop MSMEs as well as cooperatives. Now, one of the biggest hurdles that we are dealing with as SABS is getting a whole lot of MSMEs coming to the SABS saying, I've tried to enter the market. They are saying, I need to be certified. But the biggest hurdle that we have to deal with is that they cannot be certified while they are operating in their garages. They cannot be certified while they are operating in less desirable areas. And this is one hurdle that we are dealing with day in and day out. And it is for that particular reason where we are starting to look inwardly with our facilities management team to say, SABS, we've got facilities that are empty. Why don't we look at such facilities and convert those as hubs where MSMEs can come in and produce? But we need to also, as an organization, make sure that those particular hubs, they are fit for purpose. So that even when the MSMEs are saying we would like to be certified, we don't certify the MSME, we certify the hub. So by virtue of the hub being certified, everyone who gets out of that particular hub with a product, that product says, I'm produced from a certified hub. But we are not only looking at SABS, we are looking at other strategic partners where we are saying, let's look at how can we assist MSMEs. And it is rather sad that we are moving very slowly as a country, and yet there is Lesotho next door that we are working with currently. And they are supported by Germany. And Germany is establishing hubs. And they are saying, SABS, assist those hubs. Make sure that those hubs are compliant. So that at the end of the day, the MSMEs that are groomed, that are nurtured in those particular hubs, they come out of those hubs with products that are credible, with products that are SABS compliant. And this is the drive where we need to look at and say, how do we rope in DFIs to start creating hubs of that particular nature? Not only DFIs, one of the other strategic partners that we are not roping into our conversation, it is the customer or the buyer themselves. It is about time we call all those big pharmaceutical companies to start participating in forums of this particular nature and dig deep into their coffers and start investing in terms of enterprise development, in infrastructures of that particular nature, and in developing IKS within the country, and making sure that medicinal products that are produced by these particular hubs have got the first buyers being these big pharmaceutical companies. That's where we need to go as we are looking at a bigger picture within the SABS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So hubs to churn the fire amongst the youth and the innovators is the way to go. And I think to the SMMEs at the back, the message is that gone are the days that you as an enterprise, you'll want your own space, your own manufacturing facility. That is not sustainable. It cannot work. That's what Mkulu is saying. And I think the conversation that we then need to have with the CIDFAS and small business as a government department, it's how then we create a fund that will then nourish these things. For example, Sis Tandokazi spoke about how the TIA has these technology stations. So we don't have to even build any new stations. For example, we have to latch into those, but of course, in deep rural areas where these things are not there, it's essential that we do this. And to the scientists, especially those that are funded by us, I was just reflecting yesterday that I think each and every platform or member of the platform, all the labs and universities that we showcased yesterday, we already have an example. For example, 2-3 weeks back at UKZN, we launched an accelerator, a rapid accelerator that is co-funded by CIDFA and the Department of Small Business, and of course other partners. So, University of Venda, you also have an Siferi, yeah? So I think this should be the thinking that every lab, every department should be linked to enterprise development. That should be a non-negotiable. Then those enterprises and those labs be linked to product development hubs. And like this, then we start to aggregate all this into industries, which are owned by the youth. My young man, the world belongs to you now. There are people who may not know that 60%, I think, of the African continent is youth, between 15 and 30, 35. And there are those who are saying that in the next 20, 30 years, the fourth person on the planet will be an African. So if that is the case, it means that Africa must rise to the occasion. It means the world will be mainly African. And if you as the youth do not rise and become visionary and resilient and audacious in creating what we said in the video, an uncreated future, then the planet will be doomed. So you listened to these policymakers here. They might have spoken a language that you don't even understand. Even me, sometimes I would be like, what are they saying? Because I can't understand the language and the jargon. But what do you make of what you have heard, especially in us as policymakers and scientists creating a funding model, a financing model for the youth to be active participants in creating industries, in them being job creators, not job seekers? It may be a tough question, but I know you will handle this with grace. Go ahead.
Firstly, I would love to thank you, Doctor, for this opportunity. And I heard Doctor here mentioning something about if you understanding IKS, you must firstly understand the communities where knowledge comes from and how it works. And I fully agree to that. And I also have a belief that when it comes to what was mentioned earlier, development of the funding instrument and not relying on other organizations, I believe it's really, really important for us to understand that if we have to develop funds, we must actually understand the same communities that we come from. And we must understand their demands and likings. The minute when we understand those communities is how we'll be able to indicate what actually circulates in their community, what kind of products, what kind of services, what kind of demands do that community have. And when we understand those demands on the community, that's when we know what can we give to that community and what will actually work in that community if anything has to be commercialized. Then coming to the point of youth being creative, creating jobs for themselves and not relying mostly on employment to actually sustain in their lives. It's actually important for us to understand that we need each other, we need to encourage community unity. This is the most important thing because most of the SMEs and businesses that are realized in our communities, they are not supported because they don't have the good products. They are not supported because they lack marketing. They are not supported mostly because of the unity that we do not have as the need and that we need one another. And we understand that if one SME has actually created an opportunity, that's when we understand this, what their creation does not only benefit them, but also benefit other people. This reduces selfishness and understanding that your success is also my success, which will encourage job creation and mostly independence. And last but not least, I do not love only talking about this conversation of funding instrument, most important. I run a stock exchange company, which is the Kasi Stock Exchange, which you can actually get your company listed there, and then you can actually go there and check the companies that are on the local, which you can purchase shares there. So this actually allows the communities to actually benefit from their local company. If I invest in that tech shop, and I also go in that tech shop and buy, I know this tech shop is going to actually make money because I'm supporting it, we are supporting it. That means its growth will actually also benefit us back. This will also actually help us more into developing our own system, which is the most important thing. I had earlier on, even on the first day of the event, they mentioned something. I had one of our doctors, Dr. Mteo, mentioned one of the most important things, that why our indigenous products need to be validated when they've been working long time ago. Why do we need Western recognition to say, yes, it's like we are needing a Western approval for our products, which is one of the most important things that we must actually address and actually work on. This, if we actually dominate our market, firstly, therefore we're going to strengthen, and not only strengthen them, but make them stable. As they are stable and the community will understand how our economy works, how these products help us, how do we benefit, therefore we'll have much support that even if we create a parallel system whereby people who understand that our indigenous products don't need Western recognition, even though who say there are people who believe that no, we still need to follow these procedures. They are still right, they're not wrong, that we can still create another system without hitting the current system. So I believe that will actually help us also to empower youth to do lots of better things and innovation and increase and improve creativity, as we'll be supporting each other. Our actions will actually determine whether the youth in the next coming years, coming to the question that if our youth will be, the Africa will be in the hands of, determine whether we as people, if we put effort, is it going to be Africa, is it going to be in our hands, or Africa won't be in our hands? So it's really important for us to invest in each other. It's really important for us to actually encourage each other to invest in the SMEs. So please support each other. You really need each other, and other person's success is not a threat to yours. And my name is Paul Oso from Northwest University. I'm an entrepreneur, and thank you.
And we safe and secure that we've got youth with such brilliant minds and visions. So, well done. We would like to have more conversations around these issues, but we don't have time. But I'd like to maybe give us 5-10 minutes opportunity to just get some hands. I will start, let me take 4 hands now. Ntate, all the way from the back, I think is the master donkey milk elder. And I see Professor Galeni. This side, I see Ntate Petulo. Did I see some youth here? Was it a hand? How many hands? 1, 2, and way at the back, Ntate Muteo, I request that you be crisp in your questions. So I'm inviting strictly questions because of time, no commentary. If there are commentary, I will be surgical and cut you. Ntate at the back.
Doc, earlier on in an open statement, you spoke about creating industries. The industries that they will create employment. Now the question is, my question goes to SABS. Gore ha ba tshwantse ba give you a certificate, a recognition certificate, what do they really need in your product? What do you really need? Let's say for argument's sake, I need certification for the donkey milk. What do they really need into that? Because Poloso just made a point that why do we need validation for our products? That's why now in the donkey milk, we don't pasteurize it. We sell raw as it is. Because what we do in our company, we take care of our donkeys. We don't use working animals, but we have 10 our donkeys to be commercial donkeys. So why should I need approval from SABS while when we grew up the donkey milk was working? Why do we need to have those approvals?
Yes. Thank you, Ntate. Then I think the second hand I recognized was Prof. Galeni.
I like the concept of the hub, but I've had an experience in KZN doing work for KZN Economic Development, trying to establish a hub for traditional medicine. And when we brought traditional healers together to work collaboratively and own the hub, and because each are used to working alone, they found it difficult to accept the model. We say, government is going to fund you. This is going to be your business. You have your own line of products which are different from the other one and stuff like that. That project had to be basically culled, having done a lot of work to get to that stage. So I'm saying I like the idea, but I think there is going to be in the IKS space. I know in farming, in agriculture, it helps with the cooperatives. They work much better, but I found in this space in particular, and I don't understand, I thought IKS would understand the concept of Ubuntu, working together, Ilima, and I I don't know, maybe we had a different set of healers that we're working with or not, but I think there's a sense of change management that we need to apply in terms of getting that to succeed. Thanks.
Thanks, Prof. Then, Remuteo, let's elevate the conversation.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, from NRF, I'm happy NRF is no longer focusing on the publications. It's going towards transformation. So I wanted to ask from NRF in terms of ratings, especially in IKS, because the people we work with, who are the experts in IKS, does NRF going to have a system that recognizes those people? I think those are the innovations in recognition of prior learning. Secondly, Ntate Ang, there's a missing debate I'm missing here on innovations in curriculum. We have a BIKS at Northwestern Venda. Other universities want to do it in South Africa, and also in the continent we get calls from other countries who are interested in innovation in curriculum in IKS, which will have an entrepreneurship aspect and such kind of things to move forward, and the 4IR. So one of the challenges we're facing with this BIKS is also on funding, because these students, they need a lot of money for work integrated learning. So I just want to find out that colleagues from Department of Education, as the other stakeholders in these issues, can they play a very important part to be able to take these issues on curriculum innovations going forward? Because now we are dealing with a new curriculum century. The curriculums which must be relevant and responsive to society, to industry, and to economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Marsha.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks to our experts. It is heartwarming to want to hear that after so long, it seems we have seen the need of how important it is to work together. And this common pot of funding, or one pot that is going to be put together, I think it's a good thing to hear that is going to happen. And I hope it can be extended across the board. We have 40% unemployment in this country. And I think it's high time that all the departments of government realize that their client is the people of South Africa. And that which they need to do is to deliver services to them. And they need to realize that actually they are experts as departments, but through the value chain, they all have a role to play. And each takes their position in that value chain so that we can achieve everything that we are looking to achieve and eventually be able to benefit the people of South Africa. I think that will be a good way of moving forward from here, because working in silos is not going to help us at all. And I think we have seen it up to now that it doesn't help. And I think as my comment, I know it's not a question, I think that needs to be considered at a higher level. Thank you.
Thanks, Ndat. Maybe let me, there's a hand, oh, sorry. Okay, I'll then take these last two in the interest of time. Go ahead, Ndat.
Thanks, Dr. Chabalala. Ms. Maseko indicated that the bringing about coherence in the funding system would help to improve the performance of the system. My recollection is that in the draft white paper on science and technology around 2017-18, that was proposed. But in the final paper, the whole thing had disappeared. I know, having gone through the process of policy development, you do stakeholder engagement, and probably there has been a pushback against that. Could you comment on what might have happened in that process? Thank you.
Please go ahead. That will be the last one. Is it, I can't see, is it Mike?
Thank you, Doc. And I'll be very quick. I think the question I have is around disclosure on previous investments in IKS enterprises and what the rate of return has been in an effort to try and attract external private money into this sector. And the reason I ask this is, if you look at the tech industry, which on paper is valued at 13 billion rand a year, compared to IKS, just the medicinal sector has a potential value of 25 billion rand. But the tech sector receives a lot more private investment than the IKS sector. And when you do the analysis, there's a lot of information about investments in tech enterprises and how they've performed, allowing investors to have confidence to continue investing in tech enterprises. But when we look at successful IKS enterprises, take Porsche M for instance, we know it's a great business, it's doing well. But as an investor, trying to calculate what is the sort of risk associated with this enterprise, the rate of return, it's very obscure. But you look at Yoko, also a South African enterprise, you start to assess that, and it's very clear the level of risk, the rate of return. So this is a question to the funders who come in this developmental space, DTIC, TIA. What is the effort in trying to share some of the data on investment performance of our more mature enterprises to give confidence to external investors to put money in?
Much relevant question. I wonder if there are any studies done yet, but something to consider. I will then give you all an opportunity to respond to the questions that were directed to you, but also in the same vein, have a minute to just share your parting shot, and then we'll close. Please go ahead. We'll start with yourselves. Sis Notan. Oh, sorry, Notan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions. And I think the first one that relates to the changes or the white paper on science and technology. Unfortunately, I was not part of the changes. Maybe Tando will shed some light. But all I can attest to is that with the revision of the white paper, then the aspect of commercialization and also technology development, not for the sake of technology development, came in strongly. And based on that, it then said what strategies do we put in place to ensure that that happens. And I think that's why technology commercialization, industrialization is on our tongues now, because it's no longer about developing knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but also it has to have societal benefits and economic benefits. The second question around investment performance, I think within the DTIC, we do those studies to see, because there's lots of investment done in specific sectors. So this is one thing that I alluded to yesterday. I said, you know, if you think about IK is a knowledge form. You know, and that we use to then support specific sectors as articulated by the DTIC in terms of prioritization. So within each sector, those studies are done to say what even local investment and foreign investment, foreign direct investment that was made, and what is the return on investment, and those I think are in public domain. I wouldn't think there would be one on IK for instance, because IK is not classified as an industrial sector, I think, yet. Maybe that's the right way to say yet, but yeah, with other sectors that we are driving as priorities within the department, we do those investment on return studies. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm gonna start with the one on the investment by private sector. So if you look at the percentage share of the JSE ownership, that is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 60% of the companies that are listed there are foreign companies, and with headquarters elsewhere, which means that investment decisions are made elsewhere, not in South Africa, are made in countries, first world countries, which don't necessarily even know and understand what IKS is. They understand your Panado, they understand everything else, but they don't understand it. So they cannot then seek to invest in areas that they don't think is valuable for them. That's one. The second thing is that for private capital, IKS is a competition to the private market. You are going to be competing now with Aspen, with Panado, because you're going to be using this other a product which is indigenous. You find at the back of your house. And so it does seem like it could be a competing investment area for private capital to come in, and which it should not. So what we've done to bring in private sector investment, at least from our side as the department and the Technology Innovation Agency, and I think it is going to deal with Matlowi's question as well around a common funding instrument. What private sector requires for it to invest, particularly in a sector that it, number one, it doesn't really understand and it doesn't see an immediate benefit, but if you're able to define the investment mandate for it, it needs what is called first loss capital. Israel has done it very well. First loss capital is saying, should this thing not work, I as private sector would at least lose 50%, but you as the state or whoever else is the investor in that country will lose 100%. So private sector requires insulation. And hence the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation, in 2019, 2020, they launched what is called the Innovation Fund. Now the Innovation Fund was meant to be that first loss capital for private sector to come in into sectors which were largely not sectors that private sector would come in. They are risk, they're not well known. These are sectors where the asset class is university, IP from universities, IP from technology-based or bio-based IKS, and for government to then say, or for the Innovation Fund then to then say, we'll provide first loss capital, let's educate you as scientists and so forth with this particular instrument. And what you then needed to do, you needed to find fund managers who are in the same space, which are private sector as well, who understand the language and understand the sectors, who also look like those sectors, who would then be able to manage those funds and leverage them with other private sector markets. Let me make a practical example so that I'm not seeming to talk theory. What the Innovation Fund then did, the first installment was about 200 million. We took that 200 million, we then said, okay, we will partner, we'll get implementing partners. One of the implementing partners would be the Public Investment Corporation. Now we know the Public Investment Corporation is one of the biggest pension funds in Africa. It's 1 trillion, whatever, right? We will give them we'll give them about, let's say, 80 million rands of the Innovation Fund. They must go and then, remember the PIC funds most of the JSE listed companies, and they give money to them as well in terms of fund management. They must go and leverage that Innovation Fund, but taking the sectors that are in the decadal plan, those including the biggest being bioeconomy. Then we said, okay, let's also look for private sector to manage this capital and leverage it. We worked with the SA Innovation, SA SME Fund, which is a venture capital fund owned by private capital. These are your Aspens, your Adcock Ingram and so forth. And now those companies are indirectly investing into these sectors. Now what we are seeking to do with the new fund for ICAS is exactly that. We're then saying, let's look at this joint fund, which has everyone else putting money into this pot, including your government investors, your SETFA, IDC, DTIC, NRF. I'm so happy, Doc, NRF is intrinsically, it's just organically coming into this, right? That the vision with us putting this IKS Innovation Fund is to exactly take that model. We will then say, let's look at a private sector fund manager, because a lot of private sector has anxiety to give money to government, trust, PFMA takes long, and so forth, right? But then still as private, as government, you don't become a limited partner. You still are very influential in the decisions and the policies that are made. Then we're saying this common instrument must then find a place to now provide that first lot capital. Number two, provide blended finance, insulation of that government money together with private capital. And what we've done since 2019 as TIA, just to give you a practical example, we have done that. We launched what is called, I mean, the gentleman from NRF was talking about industry coming together. We launched what is called the Industry Matching Fund. We put money together with IDC, with PIC, with SETFA, with DPSA, into specific sector-focused funds. One of it was biotech, which was not including ICAS at that time. One of it is university technology, one of it. So we've done it since 2019 till now as TIA, right? And the department has helped us through the Innovation Fund to execute that. So with ICAS, it's the same model, to have a dedicated ICAS Innovation Fund, which is that central instrument that Nontombi and NRF was talking about. So it's a journey that we've already started, and we're now seeing private capital coming in. Now let's go to Matlow's point, which I think I've inherently covered, around saying that the white paper had this idea of a single instrument for specific or what, a way of syndicating. Of course, you know that we've transitioned from white papers to what is now called the decadal plan. Now, chapter 6, I think it's chapter 6 or chapter 9 of the decadal plan. Please, I implore you to go and read it, colleagues. It talks about coordination of the system. Now, from an innovation perspective, it talks about the advent, since 15 years ago, of a technology innovation agency and the National Intellectual Property Management Office, NIPMO, which were meant to reduce fragmentation of innovation funding support. That particular chapter talks about the frustration of a fragmented funding ecosystem to support what from your research to your industrialization, to Nondombi's point, that we must have a value chain approach. Hence the birth of the Innovation Fund. Hence, in our case as TIA, to make that work, the birth of the Industry Matching Fund. And so my point is that the department never necessarily lost that. I think it delayed to do it, but since 2020, that has been the approach. And hence the new approach of saying a central fund, because the department is already, so the decadal plan promotes it. And actually our KPIs, one of our KPIs from the department is that you must show to us that you've leveraged funding from other people and so forth. So it's already intrinsically there. And what that fund would look at, now I'm reducing it to the IKS a joint fund that we're talking about. It would work from what is called, private sector calls it pre-seed, seed, and Series A. Pre-seed is where you are talking about your proof of concept, where your NRF would be largely exiting and the tier coming in. It talks about your seed, it talks about your commercial, it's Series A, which is the manufacturing and so forth. So what this fund would then look at is pre-seed to Series A, all of it in one, and that's how private sector funds. Private sector does not like to put money where it's pre-seed there, it's seed there, it's Series A there. That's how they fund. They find a journey. They want to see the entire project following through. So that's how the instrument we're thinking of as well will be designed, from pre-seed so that everyone in the value chain can see themselves. I think the last one was really around, I wanted to comment a bit on the hubs that Prof was talking about that. what we've, and I think Ank, you've spoken about it, what we are trying to promote is not to, I think there's this tendency in South Africa of wanting to create new things instead of making the ones that exist work. Maybe creating new hubs, creating new things. If you look at our technology platforms or our technology stations, one of the models we're putting in partnership with CEDFA and with the DSTI and other players and DSBD. Actually, they wanted to do tech stations and they've stopped and said, we're going to work with you, is to create semi-commercial pilot manufacturing facilities within the tech stations because they already have that and the platforms. Now, CEDFA and DSBD, Department of Small Business Development, used to have an instrument called product assist or something, but it should be an instrument that sets up these pop-up shared manufacturing facilities. And we're saying let's rather bolster, and the intention is to support innovative enterprises. But we're saying the existing facilities, which are tech stations, where most of these ICAS SMMs are already supported. So it's not going to be a new thing. Let's have those semi-commercial piloting facilities. And this single funding instrument that we're talking about, this joint funding instrument, which is a syndication of all of that, should be able to have a activity that funds, a funding activity towards that element, whereby we're saying, we're not gonna put up all these pilot facilities. We're going to fund them being centralized somewhere, and then we allow you to utilize them so that you are ready now to go into mass manufacturing. So that when IDC asks you for collateral, you are able to or track record, you are able to produce it because this joint fund has helped you with this semi-commercial piloting for you to sell 10 or 20 products to clicks, then you are able to produce that track record. Thanks, Sam.
I think I'm also going to comment on that IKS hub. I think one of the idea, before I come to you, Dr. Mateo, I think one of the ideas that make such hubs fail is that as policymakers, we are to blame. Sometimes we create these hubs with the idea of, trickling down the decadal plan, the national priorities towards the community, But just try and imagine a situation whereby before having a hub, you engage with those traditional healers to say, what kind of a hub would you guys like to see? So instead of doing a top-down approach, you do a bottom-up approach whereby those traditional healers can give you ideas, and those ideas can link with the decadal plan, So I think that is the idea that we need to move towards, to engage. We can't, as researchers, say we know what the problem is without engaging the community. We first have to go to the communities, work with the communities, and understand the problems before we can start with our research and solve these problems. And coming to Dr. Mateo's question of rating, yes, that is a transformative idea. It is possible, and when you look at IKS, perhaps we must not look at just publication, because rating is all about, it's a peer review process. Perhaps when it comes to IKS, what we need to look at is the kind of work that, these knowledge bearers do in the community, and if there are articles, that prove that there is such a work that is being done, then we can use that as a basis, because that in its sense is also a publication, the work that you do, and hence that is why I said as NRF, we are moving towards a vision for 2030, research for a better society, whereby whatever research that is being done and can have impact. And I think when it comes to investment, just that last point, we need to pat ourselves in the back when it comes to investment. When you compare with the BRICS country, South Africa is sitting at an investment of 0.6% when it comes to the GDP in research and development. And I think The other countries, such as India, is sitting at 0.7. And Russia is sitting at 1%. Interestingly, Brazil is sitting at 1.2%. And then China, obviously, there's a lot of investment that goes into that. They are sitting at 2.6%. So I think there is investment within South Africa itself, and we need to pat ourselves in the back. And just the last takeaway, I think we need to shift away from thinking investment comes in a form of monetary value. Just this platform has created a network that on its own is investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ketha. One of the things that I have highlighted is that we need to start dealing with silos. As government, we need to eliminate silos. And we also need to commend ourselves as institutions. We've got some of the good policies. But it is about time that we start implementing those policies. The tire has to hit the tarmac so that we realize those particular policies. When you deal with traditional healers, there's an element of trust that has to be dealt with. We have dealt with those traditional healers quite a lot, including in KZN. And there's an issue of trust amongst themselves, one. And number two, there's an issue of trust between them and us. I know Ugogo Pepsile, Ugogo Amanda Gabashe, they've dealt with that issue at length. But I can safely tell you now that most of the efforts that they've put in this did not yield much. We still need to look at that in depth. And I just want to, Prof, I just want to encourage you, it's not only with traditional healers. We are working with women producing sanitary towels. We said for them to succeed in that space, let them come together, and they agreed. But it was in the middle of the conceptualization of the project where they decided to pull from different directions because they did not trust each other. So that is an issue that we need to deal with amongst MSMEs. And if we can be able to convince them, ukuthi izandla ziyagezana, we will not succeed in that space. Now, one of the other aspects, Ketla, that we need to look at, there's a dwindling pool of indigenous knowledge holders. Most of those people who hold this information are old and some are going. And the biggest challenge is, as South Africans, we are not good at documenting information. We need to start encouraging ourselves in documenting information of that particular nature. There's a gentleman at the back who spoke about how, or who asked how does he get certified by SABS. It starts with training, and there's a number of standards that you need to focus on. There's either HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, or there's ISO 22001, or there's FSSC. These are the food safety standards. But as a starting point, I would encourage you to go for training on HACCP. Once you've done training on HACCP, we need to look at how to develop and implement processes in line with HACCP. And from that point on, you can then be able to apply for certification. Now the question is, why do we need approval? The issue of spaza shops is the very issue where people are saying, I don't need to be approved. The issue of listeriosis is the very issue where people are not being inspected audited by a third party. Now, it is so good to say my product is good, it can be consumed by anyone, until there's a bacteria that hits your product and people die. Your brand gets tarnished for life. So, this is about brand protection. Go for training, we'll assist you. I'm even willing to give you a voucher for training so that you can train for free. I think I've covered all aspects. The last aspect that we need to talk about is the issue of investment in indigenous knowledge system. Can I just misbehave? Before we even consider other people investing in our products, let's stop demystifying traditional medicine. As South Africans, we are divided when it comes to traditional medicine. Religion has taught us that traditional medicine is witchcraft. And it is for that point that it is easier for us to buy traditional medicine from China and from India, yet fail to buy our own traditional medicine, which is as good as the traditional medicine from other countries. Let's start inwardly and begin to tell a story, and a positive story, about our own African traditional medicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. I believe that every topic, every question has been covered, but I would love to actually create awareness on something that I believe it was not touched or tapped in, or maybe it was raised in the room, or I might not have heard it properly. We are actually mostly focused on investment, attracting investment from private, different organizations, which is really a good thing, I believe, and it's going to create a major good impact. But one thing that I have realized is that I never heard about how are we going to protect those investments, which I believe. I have actually conducted a survey for more than 80 local businesses when I was listing some of those businesses in my stock market online. What I realized is that most of those businesses, they don't actually know the true value of those businesses due to lack of knowledge about those businesses, which is actually, it's a risk to actually not know how much the business is worth. Someone can come and say, okay, I want to invest in your company, and which is really a good idea, which is going to be really impactful for the company. But it is also negative not to know its value, because if other external sources, they actually invest much and take more from the company, that takes the companies and ownership of the knowledge away from us. That makes us to be the one presenting those companies, but we do not actually own them. And if we do not own those companies, that means we don't have power for ownership and control over those companies. That's why we're having problems such as people who actually request that some of the products should have standards, they must need to be on the shelf. That's why we're having this type of requirements to be on the shelf. So it's really important for us to protect those companies from being taken away from us instead of us only representing them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me thank the panelists for all the wisdom that you have shared. but also the vision and the strategies. I think we now have a unified resolution that we need a holistic funding model for our endeavors, a model that links innovation and manufacturing. We cannot have all these disintegrated funding mechanisms that at the end of the day do not take us anywhere. It is time for us to industrialize using this knowledge. Maybe a few things, few takeaways, so don't worry, we still have some times in terms of what we'll save up in the afternoon. One, I want to just emphasize what Mkulu said. You know, last night I said we live in the age of science and technology. And if you're not aware, one who controls science and technology controls the world. It is a fact. If you want to be a business person, an entrepreneur, an industrialist, especially in natural products, you have to make sure that there are processes that you follow for your products to be safe. I said the other day that science is universal and that we need to disabuse ourselves from thinking that science is Western. We are producing science as Africans. You saw the scientists, the quality of the scientists that we have. That is essential. Secondly, there are certain conversations which are old and tired. They are old school conversations that were bred during the times of the war, epistemic wars between natural sciences and social sciences or humanities. This is the time of transdisciplinarity. And some of the words may have certain connotations then, like validation. Validation in our context, within the work that we do, doesn't mean that another knowledge system must validate your knowledge system. It means evaluation, taking something through the processes. I think we need to understand that. Otherwise, we'll then keep on having a conversation that is 30 years old. We must elevate the conversation, colleagues, to a different platform. With that, let's thank up our colleagues here, and then we'll then meet later. Thank you so much.